Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to the Mad Max Minute Podcast, the daily podcast where we break down Mad Max 1 minute at a time. I'm Rick.
And I'm Julia.
And on this Monday, we are talking about minute 16, which begins with Jessie calling out to Max, and it ends with Goose arriving at the halls of justice. Good Monday morning, Julia.
Happy Monday.
So, I particularly like how this minute begins, because it probably begins in the most Australian way possible. Of one person yelling at another person with just, "Oi!"
Yeah.
So, one thing that really stopped me as I was watching this minute was the thought about neighbors. We discussed last minute how that house is obviously divided up into different apartments. Yes. But it made me wonder, do they have neighbors? How many neighbors do they have? Do those neighbors appreciate the fact that, Max leaves his police radio on all night with the windows rolled down, just chattering away? Because I'm sure that sounds just amazing.
Yeah, my first thought was the saxophone.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that one.
Yeah. If our next door neighbor was playing a saxophone in her living room, I think I would go bananas.
Yeah. I mean, because we only see her playing the saxophone once, but you got to wonder...
I mean, she has to practice.
Yeah, she has to practice. So is every night just sitting on the other side of that wall, ripping your hair out because your neighbor is constantly playing the saxophone. We lived above a guy who played concert guitar. And it wasn't like he was in a garage band or anything like this. This was very professional sounding, deliberative guitar playing. But we would sit in the living room, and I would be able to hear it. I don't know how much you were able to hear.
I don't remember it annoying me, but I think I could hear it. Yeah, I think I could hear it, but I don't remember it being annoying.
There are definitely more annoying instruments that neighbors can play.
Right, like the saxophone?
Yeah. Any sort of brass instrument.
Yes.
It's not necessarily something that you can play, I want to say, quietly and considerately.
Right, it's like all or nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless... brass instruments suddenly have volume settings that I wasn't aware of. Yeah, it's pretty much all or nothing.
I don't know. You can mute a trumpet or a trombone with that thing and the horn.
Yeah.
They do it with saxophones too. Anything with that bell at the end, you can put a plug in it and it'll be muted. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't believe that we ever see her using one of those, and
nope. We also don't ever see any neighbors, so
exactly. We're sort of speculating that they even exist at this point.
Yes. It's not like they're banging on the floor with the broom telling them to be quiet.
Well, they probably shouldn't be doing that because Sprague is armed and dangerous.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You think Max is a tough character to deal with. Jessie said herself that Sprague takes after his old man and Max
He's a monster.
Straight up calls him a monster.
Yes.
Speaking of Max... So he's at the bottom of the stairs. He turns around and looks up at Jessie. And she starts making these hand motions. And she does a couple of hand motions. We get a reverse shot on Max. And then we look up. And she finishes her little hand motions there. And Max looks up at her and he asks, "What was that?" Literally, what's that? And she gives him an answer. But it's the wrong answer. Now,
yeah,
that's not entirely fair. I should probably explain my reasoning there. IMDb trivia is quick to point out that Jessie doesn't use real sign language. Those are literally just movements that she made up on the spot. Or if not on the spot, probably just before the shoot there. I jumped on YouTube and a couple of different things to try and see what the actual sign is when you want to tell someone in sign language that you're crazy about them. Trickier than I thought it was going to be, because a lot of those videos where they explain sign language are surprise, surprise, made for deaf people. And so the presenters in the videos are using American Sign Language, and I don't speak American Sign Language, or more appropriately, I don't sign American Sign Language. So I'm kind of watching them use these signs in this video, and I'm sitting there like, I have no idea what's going on. No idea what's going on. So I think I got the gist of what Crazy About You actually is. You kind of take your fist and put it in front of your face and then move it in some way. But even then, I couldn't tell you 100% exactly what it is, but it's not what she did.
Yeah, it's cute that she signs to him that she's crazy about him.
I mean, I can't argue with that reasoning.
But, I don't know.
But
it seems... Okay, so in contrast to the grumpy mask that we saw in the last minute, that was clearly an inside thing that they did back and forth, and she knew exactly what he was accusing her of and trying to get her out of when she said, I'm not grumpy. This is exactly the opposite. He has no idea what she's signing to him. It's like she just thought up on the moment, oh, I'll run out there, sign him something real quick to let him know, that I love him. And he has no idea. It would have been I think it would have been a lot more meaningful if she had signed something, first of all, that was actually what she was saying. I mean, it's not hard to sign I love you. And that he said something, that he reciprocated in a way that this is a pattern that they follow. That he either said, like, for a perfect example from Ghost, ditto, like right back at ya, or he signed something in return. That it's a little bit that they do. Mm-hmm. That would have been, I think, sweeter, more romantic, got across the message that she forgives him if he needs forgiving, that she forgives him for leaving, and that everything's fine. As is, where she signed something, he didn't know what it meant. I don't know. It was a little lame.
It kind of tells me that they're constantly inventing these new little inside jokes between them.
Okay.
That this is just another step in the ever-evolving lexicon of their little inside jokes and cutesy things.
Yes.
And I cannot argue against it being cute, but it's too long, it's too complicated, far too many steps. I mean, it's adorable, but it's dumb and I hate it.
You actually kind of brought me back around a little tiny bit to liking it by pointing out that those little inside jokes or traditions, they evolve over time. And new ones get created. And if I remember correctly, there's a callback to this later on, right? Yeah.
He remembers enough of this to recreate it further along in the movie.
Yes. So I think I'll appreciate it later on when it's referenced. But now in this scene, I think it would have been stronger for the scene if it was a tradition already established between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. That's very fair.
Which would have been very easy to do because they just did it last minute. Established that we may not know what's going on, but they do.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to the idea of her being crazy about Max. If anything, I want them to be as devoted to each other as they already are, based on what we've seen.
Yes.
But, I just, not a huge fan of all these complicated motions. It's too much. Roll it back a little bit, is all I'm saying.
Now, in your
movie from the 70s.
Investigation of this scene and the sign language, did you find out, is Australian Sign Language different than American Sign Language? Because I know times when I've seen a speech or something have a signer, sometimes there are two signers. And you can tell just by looking at them, they're doing two different languages. So I know that there's at least two common sign languages. One being American, and I haven't the faintest what the other one is. So is it possible that she is speaking a different sign language?
So Australian Sign Language is the official sign language used in Australia, and it is related to British Sign Language and New Zealand Sign Language. Even though both the United States and Australia both speak English predominantly, the Australian Sign Language and American Sign Language are very different. And that is from startasl.com. So,
although I would assume that commenters who are saying that she's not actually saying crazy about yet, I would like to think that they're saying that with the frame of mind of Australian Sign Language.
Yeah, I don't.
Although I can really trust internet commenters to be accurate.
I'm
not sure.
Think I'd be able to subscribe to the idea that the 17-step thing that she does is actual Australian for crazy about ya.
Yeah.
Because crazy about ya is literally 3 words.
Right. She does a lot. And I think two of the motions that she does looks like counting.
Yeah.
She's like touching her fingers.
And then she like points at him.
Right. So that's one word right there. You. Done. One quick motion, easy peasy. So I don't know what she was saying. But she was also coming from someone who doesn't know sign language at all. She didn't seem to be very good at it.
No.
Very practiced at it. Not that she was bad at it. She just seemed to be unsure of her motions.
Like, the first motion she did is she kind of waved her finger next to her head. That would be crazy. And then she, like, taps her mouth. We don't see what she does after that because we cut to Max. She comes back and she's counting on her fingers, pokes the side of her hand, and then points to him. So it's like, whatever the motion for about, or whatever the motion that she did after the finger wave to signify that it meant crazy as in the love as opposed to crazy as the mental condition. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just too much. It's too much.
It does occur to me, and I think I'm probably reading way too much into it, is that we've established their relationship is very loving. Now we've established that she's crazy about him. Later on, we established that he is also crazy about her. So we're building up this relationship, labeling it as crazy, and then we flip to Max being mad. So I feel like
going mad because he doesn't have her around anymore.
Yes.
Spoiler alert for a movie that you've assumedly already seen all the way through. Because if you're watching it 1 minute at a time, like we are, I can't help you. We have an excuse. We're making a podcast. I don't know what you're thinking.
So I see the parallel there is that they're crazy about each other, but they still have each other. It's a love crazy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have experienced that love crazy.
Yeah.
And then that goes away, and all that's left is the crazy.
Right.
All that's left is Max going mad.
So after she explains what it is, she gives him a smile. We get a reverse shot on him, and he smiles back.
Yeah, which I thought that was a great smile.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, it's Mel Gibson.
The two of them together are just the best, and you just want to take them and put them in a bubble and be like, no, leave my Jessie and Max alone.
Right, nothing bad can ever happen to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not how it ends, but it's heartbreaking.
It is.
When you think of how the movie ends, where they are now versus
George
where
Miller
they go.
Did a really good job of getting us invested in the characters as individuals and the characters as a couple. Not so much, I'd have to say, where he fell off was getting us invested in the characters as a family unit.
Yeah.
I think the baby was just not... if the baby was completely absent, I don't think the movie would have changed almost at all. I mean, there was a scene in the end-ish that would have had to change.
Once they start going on vacation, there are parts that the baby is going to contribute to, but for the most part, we just don't need the baby. Yeah, we're not going to be getting to that stuff for a while. Now, so yeah. Don't hold your breath. It'll be several weeks. So after they smile at each other, Max turns around and he tosses his gear into the open window of his car. Mm-hmm. Just like, do they not have like bugs and spiders and things that want to kill you in Australia that would crawl into an open window? Well, I think as Americans, we make light of like the Australian environment and way of life, saying that in Australia, everything will kill you. I think that's how people put it. Yeah. How do Australians feel about that? I mean, if they were really that scared, they wouldn't live in Australia anymore. They'd all move away if they were really that scared of spiders and lizards and things and everything in Australia that will kill you. Like, they just deal with it because they're fine with it. So that doesn't surprise me at all. The fact that his window was down I didn't even notice it. Yeah, what I did notice, and I want to comment on before we switch scenes, that I touched on a little tiny bit last minute, is during, and I think it's during this whole time, the whole sign language exchange, we can hear in the background the dispatcher on the radio. Right. And I thought that was very interesting, that I feel like the dispatcher represents the MFP and that part of his life. And Jessie's song represents his home life. And during that whole exchange, while they're outside, you can hear both of them. It's the work life creeping in and infiltrating his home life. Mm-hmm. And we can see how that has
kind of soured the morning a little bit.
Yeah.
That Jessie was sulking because he had to go back to work. And then once she has stopped sulking, because we're outside and she stopped, we hear the dispatcher coming in and pulling us out of the sweet home life that he has enjoyed.
You can almost say that this entire last sequence of him being at home over the last several minutes, that either it was the night before and they're enjoying time together, and then the news radio program comes on. Well, it's a television program, but the news comes on and brings up the subject of the Knight Rider, and that's work creeping into their home life there. The next morning when we see him, he's already dressed partially in his uniform, and so that's another element of work creeping into his family life there. He's got such an overwhelming profession that it just seeps into every element of his life, and I find it interesting. We're going to see that we head back to work with him in the second half of this minute. But when he's on the job, there's none of that. There's none of his family life seeping into when he's on the clock.
Yeah, it's all one way.
But when he's off the clock, his job is constantly worming its way into that time he's supposed to be able to devote fully to his family.
Yeah. I think looking at it that way and noticing those details helps explain his actions a little further down into the movie, where he takes a step back.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting as we gather more evidence of that and get closer to that scene, how that stepping away feels different after some overanalyzing rather than just watching the movie.
Right.
I think a lot of things are going to feel different after overanalyzing.
So, speaking of work life, we smash cut from Jessie watching Max from the top of the stairs. We go right to an exterior shot of the Halls of Justice.
It was very jarring, very sudden. The music was a drastic change.
Oh, yeah.
From like soft and gentle and romantic to
like bah, bah, bah,
yeah,
like heavy horns.
Yes.
I appreciate that this minute is almost perfectly split in two. We get 30 seconds of home and then like 30 seconds of work.
Yes.
It's like, I don't think I could have planned it any better. So, as we are showing these outside establishing shots, we have the dispatch speaking over the loudspeaker. There's a mention of supplies that can be requisitioned from the People's Bond, and the officers are encouraged not to exploit their privileges. There's also a thing about Memorandum 7, but we're going to talk about 7 in the next minute because we get the end of that statement in the next minute. But I find it interesting.
Real quick, before you mentioned that, what was that you said about requisitioning from the people's...
That's what I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
The MFP have, like, they call it the People's Bond, which I guess is a cache of supplies that the MFP officers are able to pull from. Uh-huh. And I feel like
apples?
I feel like that's the implication, that they have food stores and ammunition supplies and things that they have holed up. And it's taken, like taxes probably from the surrounding communities and whatnot, which makes sense because that's what police stations do. They use local taxes to fund their supplies. And I find it interesting that they have to come right out and tell the officers, hey, just because we have this stuff here doesn't mean you can just take from it willy-nilly.
Right. I think that it kind of disappoints me to say this, but I think they're talking to Max. I think that's how we could read it, is that he took 3 apples. He took too many apples. One for himself, one for Goose, and we never see what happens to that third apple. And I know they're just apples, but it feels very representative. And I'm a little disappointed in Max that he took too many apples.
So the thing I like about what he's doing there, he's actually like juggling the apples.
Yes.
And then he ends up throwing one to Goose when he rides up. But while he's waiting in the courtyard, I want to talk a little bit about the location. Okay. And this is where that sewage thing I was talking about comes up. So that area is the Spotswood pumping station in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. So it was built in the 1890s as a key component of the Melbourne sewerage scheme. All of this information I took from museumvictoria.com.au/sciencework, talking about that specific building, or those specific buildings. Functioning as the heart of the system, the pumping station played a vital role in helping to overcome the city's early public health and sanitation problems. For almost 70 years, from 1898, all the sewage collected in Melbourne's underground sewers passed through the pumps at Spotswood on its way to the treatment works in Werribee. The architectural designs for the pumping station buildings were prepared by the Board of Works' designing engineer, Christian Kausmaul, who's a German. It was based on a classical revival style known as Second French Empire, which was popular in Europe during the mid-19th century. The buildings were constructed by the contractor A.G. Shaw in polychrome brickwork on bluestone footings supplied by the Footscray and Malmesbury Stone Cutting and Quarrying Company. The predominant brick color is red, with cream brick string courses, quoins, window arches, and pilasters, and cornices of Barrabool sandstone. And when I said sandstone, I meant sandstone. The roofs were originally clad in Welsh slate with glazed skylights over raised lantern ventilators along each ridgeline. So very iconic looking.
Yes.
Which is pretty much exactly why they picked it as the facade of the MFP.
Yes. So the courtyard scene that we're in right now, that's in what's the name of the building you just talking about? I forgot already.
Spotswood Pumping Station.
So the courtyard, is it also the exteriors that we see? Is it also the pumping station?
Pretty much.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, it's part of a larger complex, obviously. But that courtyard where Max is waiting, there's a later scene involving some of the gang members that's shot outside. That's also in the pumping station. It's nice because it's got those two large sections of building that kind of have a nice clean opening to them, but then you also have the courtyard as well. Very cool looking. And I figured you'd appreciate a bit of talk about architectural design.
Yes.
So from the high angle shot in the courtyard, we zoom in on Max juggling the apples. So you know how much I love watching CinemaSins videos on YouTube. Plenty of times we've heard the statement... the narrator, Jeremy, he narrates all of the sins, and he says one of the sins he uses is the director said, "Here, eat an apple. It'll make you look like even more of an a-hole." And that's exactly what I thought of when I saw Max take one of the apples and take a big old bite out of it.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, why? Why is that a thing? So I looked up on TV tropes, and the trope specifically is called "the snack is more interesting." And this is kind of a thing that permeates through this whole scene of him and Goose that's coming up. And so the trope is described thusly on tvtropes.org. A character enters what should be a serious situation for them and yet seems completely bored with the events. Instead of giving the occasion his full attention, they seem more invested in the snack they happen to be eating. Apples, potato chips, or any other food that's particularly noisy are the most popular for this, since the obnoxiously loud crunching can drown out what's going on around the eater.
Okay, yeah, that definitely seems like something that happens.
The sample picture on the article is Chris Pine from the first Star Trek movie while he's taking the Kobayashi Maru test. He's sitting in that captain's chair chomping on an apple.
Yes.
So, excellent example.
Yes.
Of that trope in action. So, the last quarter of this minute is taken up by Goose riding in on his motorcycle with his leg in a cast up on the handlebars. We get an IMDb continuity error ping in this minute.
Yeah.
So the error states, Goose falls on his left leg during his crash in the opening chase scene. In this next scene, he has a cast on his right leg. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. Because when he comes up, he's got his right leg up on the thing. And I'm like, okay, let's go back and watch the crash. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Like 5 times.
Uh-huh.
And each time I'm watching this, I'm seeing him fall down with his left leg underneath the bike and him sliding along. And I'm like, okay, maybe the fairing on the side of the bike protected his leg enough that his left leg would be okay. Maybe he smashed his right leg against the pickup or something like that. Nope. Not how it happens. The way the bike slides on its side, the back tire of the motorcycle hits the pickup truck, and his arm, he slams on the side of the pickup truck, almost as if he's hitting it, and his right leg is just fine. So I don't see any situation from that crash specifically as to why that right leg would be broken. And we know that the broken leg came from that crash because we got that one line of dialogue from the caravan driver.
I think his leg is broken.
Yeah, she plainly said, I think his leg is broken. But there's no reason why the right leg would be broken. And it's a huge continuity error.
Well, so I did not pick up on that error. I wrote in my notes that it's lucky he broke his right leg so that he can shift his bike with his left.
Very true.
Now, I don't know if Australian bikes might be different, that you shift with your left foot.
Yeah, if the steering wheels are on the right side of the car, maybe the
motorcycles
shifting pedals
are arranged differently as well.
Yeah.
But considering that he rode in just fine, I'm going to say yes, that the shifter is on the left foot. Now, back to the crash. I think we decided that it was a conscious, controlled decision on his part because it was the best outcome that he decided to lay down his bike.
Right, because his brakes were already locked up and his
right,
tires
there wasn't
lost
really
traction.
anything else that he could do. Now, considering that he did it on purpose, wouldn't he lay down on his right side to protect his left leg, which is his riding leg, and the parts of the bike that are on the left side for the shifting? Wouldn't he want to protect that side of the bike and so put that side of the bike up? So shouldn't he have fallen on purpose to his right?
I'm going to say yes, he should have.
If he had the choice, which I think we decided he did have the choice. It was controlled. He did it on purpose.
Yeah, because, I mean, your clutch is on the
have
left
gone
side,
down.
your shifting pedals are on the left side. The only thing you got on the right side are brakes.
Right, and that's hand, right?
Well, you've got the hand brake is the front tire and the foot brake is the back tire.
Oh, okay.
And so even if the back brake gets messed up, it's like if your right
have
leg is
something.
broken, you're not going to be able to press that anyway.
Right.
So I think what happened is they filmed the stunt and then they had it in the script already that he had broken his right leg.
Yeah.
Because as they were writing it up, they figured, okay, well, we can't make him break his left leg because then he wouldn't be able to shift or anything like that. And so when they actually did the day of the stunt, they probably didn't have a spare Goose motorcycle lying around. Like we saw in the making of documentary that we watched, they only had 10 motorcycles. Mm-hmm. They only had 10 Kawasaki's that were given them by the company. And they had to do Goose's motorcycle. They had to do a bunch of the hero motorcycles for the gang members. It's like they didn't have just oodles of production quality motorcycles lying around that they could just crash time after time after time.
Right. I imagine they only got one shot. And we also learned that they had trouble with their stunt coordinator, their stunt director, I think his title
Grant Page,
is.
yeah.
Yes, he was in quite a serious accident just as filming was getting started. So he was out of commission. The way they were talking, it made it sound like it was actually pretty quick.
Yeah, it was only like a day or so.
Yes. But I think that there were shots, that there were stunt shots shot without him.
Yeah.
So maybe this is an example. Yeah. I don't know.
So it's unfortunate. But luckily, it's not like Goose walks around in a full cast for the entire rest of his time.
And I'm not sure, I mean, did he not really break his leg? Or does this take place over a greater span of time than I thought it did? But he seems to heal up awfully fast.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. You know, it's those crazy Goose healing powers that apparently are a thing. I don't know.
Tell that to Goose from Top Gun.
Yeah, that was a different kind of crash.
He didn't heal from that crash.
So that pretty much brings us to the end of this minute. Do you have anything else?
No, not really. I was impressed by Goose's ability to ride with one leg and to keep such good control over the bike. I know that the style of bike that Goose rides, and it's the same bike, so the style that everybody in the movie rides, is very different than the style you ride. But could you imagine riding your bike the way that Goose is riding his?
No, I can't. And I have a lot to say about that next minute, actually, because we see the end result of him riding in. We'll definitely talk more about that, because in this minute he kind of rides in the next minute he actually like comes to a stop and parks. Yeah. And so I have several questions about that situation.
Okay.
So with that to look forward to, our website is madmaxminute.com. You can follow us on Twitter at madmaxminute and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/madmaxminute.
Thank you for joining us for Mad Max Minute number 16. We'll see you tomorrow.
Motorbikes and leather men take me to the edge of the dream. Hold on tight, so it's short.